Well, hello and welcome to our how-to video on the CIS-1A grade estimator. This is for students enrolled in Scott McLeod's CIS-1A classes. I'm Scott McLeod and I'm going to take you on a quick tour of the grade estimator Excel file set up to make it a lot easier for you to figure out how well you're doing in this class, right down to the percentage point and the letter grade. So let's begin from Blackboard, and we need to first of all download the grade estimator file. So jump into your Blackboard homepage for our CIS-1A class and locate by scrolling down as necessary until you find the grade estimator, which should be posted for you. And we're going to go ahead and download that. And depending on your browser, there may be a slightly different interface to that downloading process. And then locate it and open it up. It is an Excel file, so it will open up in Excel, and you can enable it for editing because we're going to be definitely putting in some scores. And the whole point of this process here is to recognize that Blackboard does not do a very good job of giving you an idea of how well you're doing overall in the class. It's more complicated than what Blackboard can do. So this is going to help, but it's going to take a little bit of effort on your part to gather your scores. Some of the scores are reported well in Blackboard, such as most Connect scores. SimNet scores, you might be better off getting them from within SimNet. Either way, wherever you go to get your scores, we're going to be entering them into this Excel file, and it's then going to summarize your overall grade in the class. And it's using the percentages of how much everything is worth as stated on the course syllabus. So getting back to the file itself here, we're going to begin where it says your name. We're going to click on that cell and enter. You enter your name there to identify yourself. It's not something you're going to turn in. This is just something for your own awareness of where you are in the class. And I highly recommend after you get it started that you just keep track of it on a weekly basis at least to keep your score updated so you always know where you are. So there'll be no surprises when we get towards dates like last day to drop or toward the end of the term, final exams, and you're wondering how well I have to do on the final to get certain grades. This is going to be able to answer all those kinds of questions. Okay, so now that you have this file set up as demonstrated here, we're going to start entering scores. Now column B is where you're going to be entering scores. Before we start entering anything though, let's just take a look at how this worksheet is organized. It's set up in separate sections, as you can see here. First of all, connect chapters. Now these are the chapters that you go through prior to a quiz. Then the next section below that are the actual quizzes themselves. Below that, we have SimNet related assignments, SimBooks, followed by projects, followed by the exams. You may or may not have taken any exams at this point, maybe the word exam. And the last two sections are on final exam and participation scores, which normally you wouldn't worry about that, obviously, until the very end of the course where you might have something to fill in for those. For now, we'll just ignore those. And at the very bottom is where this will fill in these summary values and give you a final overall percentage for the course. So we'll keep an eye on this highlighted area at the bottom, which is really the culmination of all of our scores. So back up towards the top here, and let's just go through an example of how we might enter some scores and see how this works. So whether you're actually getting these scores from Blackboard or from Connect or from SimNet, whatever works best for you in order to obtain those scores accurately. But let's just use as an example, maybe Connect Chapter 1. Let's just say we got 70% or 70 out of 100 perhaps. So we would type in a 70, reflecting that score. For Chapter 2, let's say we did a little better and got an 85 out of 100 or 85%. So we'll just enter 85. Now for Chapter 3, let's say something happened and we just didn't get it done in time, and therefore we have a 0. So I have to enter that 0. In order for it to calculate properly, I go ahead and enter the 0. I do not leave it blank. The only things I leave blank here are things that I have not done yet because they're not due yet. So Chapter 4, let's take a more positive spin and say we completed that in time with 100%. So there's some example scores. Now you may have noticed down here at the bottom of this section, there's an average being calculated for us. I just want to mention a couple things about the way that's calculated. First of all, there's a formula in this cell rather complicated one that we don't have to worry too much about. But we just want to make sure that we don't try to type anything over it, because in doing so, you would remove the formula and all of the magic that comes with it. So leave those alone. One of the things that these formulas do for you is they factor in the need to drop your lowest score. Now, you may or may not be aware of that, but it is announced somewhere that I will be dropping your lowest Connect chapter score at the end of the semester, and your lowest quiz score, and your lowest SimBook score, and your lowest project score. I will not be dropping any of your exam scores. And these formulas factor in those details. The only thing about the average is that it will not drop a score until you get at least 10 scores entered in. So as the semester progresses and you eventually get 10 scores entered here, you'll notice that it will drop that 0 if that's your only 0. So it'll have a positive impact for you when you get to that 10th score eventually. So you have that to look forward to possibly if you do have a low score. Now, it will not drop, nor will I, more than one low score from any section. Just your one lowest score in each section. Let's move down now and just pretend we have some quiz scores to enter. Those would be done in the same manner. Let's say I got a 75% or 75 out of 100 points on that first quiz, and maybe 90 on the next one. Third one, let's say 80, and maybe I have not yet taken the quiz score for chapter 4, and then I just leave it empty. And as you can see, the average is calculating there for me again for each section. And if we scroll down to the very bottom now, we can see that those same averages are showing up down here, and it's using in the syllabus the percentages that each one of those sections is worth towards your total grade. And so it's calculating now 15% of the 64, 20% of the 82. That'll give you a 74% in the class, which means if this is how you're doing, you would be in the C range. If you're close to 70, you're in danger of going down into a D range. If you're close to 80, you're just about into the B range. So you can see how you're doing overall based on that. Moving on down, let's look at SimBooks. Works pretty much the same way. So if I've got 80% on my first SimBook and 90% on my second SimBook, oops, forgot to do that Word Chapter 2 SimBook, Word Chapter 3, 100%, and so on. Projects. Now remember, of course, that some of these you can do more than once, and maybe you can improve your scores. So you just keep these things up to date as you progress through the course on a day-to-day basis. SimNet projects. 70% on the first one, let's say, 65% on the second one, 85 on the third one. So you just enter your scores. When we get to the exams, Word exam, let's say we got 80%. Now if we start to look down at the summary, we can see pretty much everything is included now except for the final exam and participation scores. Leave those blank, don't worry about them until toward the end of the semester. Eventually, your lab hours, if they are properly recorded and submitted as 18 or more, then you would come in here and you would enter a 1. You shouldn't do this now, but you should do it at the end of the semester if in fact that's the case. If you don't complete that required 18 hours, if you've got 17 hours, for example, then you haven't fully satisfied the state guideline requiring us to do 18 hours, so you would enter a 0. There's no partial credit here. You either satisfy the state's requirement, get a 1 in there, or you don't, you put a 0 in there. Okay, and then the other part of the active participation grade is going to have to come from me based on other activity in the course and in Blackboard and discussions and whatever. And I'll either post those or you can email me to get your individual grades. So I would suggest just for now, leave it blank. So that's how you use this. If you have any questions about how to use it, you can post them in Blackboard or you can email me personally to figure something out so that this can be used frequently. Always enter scores right after you get them, and you can see their impact as you progress through the course. And just so you know, this is exactly what I will be using to calculate your grades, and that's why I'm showing it to you. So there's no doubt about what your score is going to be. I'm going to do the same thing that the grade estimator is doing. So I hope you take advantage of this nice tool, and hopefully it's showing you a grade that you're happy with. Thank you,